make it better than yesterday. You can always find a way to start over again. Tuesday, when the sun rises, you can start over again. A new day, you can make it better than yesterday.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I am so excited about this. Now, y'all know we've been around. This is our 7-year anniversary. And when I started this podcast, there was a list of people who I wanted on the show because we archive and share Black trans experience. We center them, and when I'm thinking about people that I'm like, oh my God! So if I had a dream list of people, now I had a couple of people that were on my dream list, and it's just been amazing. But there's 3 people that I'm like, I'm really, really waiting on. And you are one of those 3 people that I got to get this person on my damn show because I have been watching her journey and watching everything that you have been doing. And I have been so proud from the very, very beginning. So I want to introduce to y'all my girl, artist, songwriter, amazing Jaila Simms.
Thank you for having me, Diamond. You know I love you. You know I live for you. Like seriously, back to the YouTube days. Like I remember when I first did making this band, you were the first trans commentator, trans personality to actually notice and give a shout out even during those days. And it was like it made my day. Like it made me you know what I'm saying, understand oh, your sisters see you. Your sisters see you.
Period.
That's what it's all about. That's who it's for. All of it.
Yes. So let me give you a little bit of history of that moment. So you from Chicago.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Come on, Midwest.
So we Midwest church queen kind of girls.
That part.
Oh, we come from this. You got to be from the Midwest to know kind of what I'm talking about. But we come from a lineage of musical people. So when we think about even Thomas A. Dorsey from like the 1931, when we talk about Chicago specifically, when we think about James C. Chamber of the Chicago Mass Choir in 1980.
Hello.
When we think about Ricky Dillard, when we think about
the Soul Children of Chicago.
Yes, the Soul Children of Chicago. Lamar Campbell, Ryan Bryant, think about Orlando Draper, just as a kind of like a just a person who just made an
impact
that I really
sure.
And then if we think about even like artists from there, like Jennifer Hudson, just people who we know like these kind of gospel-y, it's just a musical lineage. Shaka Khan. Yeah, huge people. And then, this is not Chicago specifically, but Midwest, the Clark sisters, Commission, and you just think about all of these people, and it's just something about Midwest folks with the history of us kind of coming from, and I know you like myself also have a family full of Mississippi folks. So us coming from the South and going up, we had that kind of blues gospel history, and it's just something about it that just makes us different. So me and my gay homeboy, we met each other first period of high school. He was the type of church boy that he could sing every fucking part. Like he could sing tenor, he could sing soprano, and it'd be times where it would be just us singing soprano because some sopranos didn't show up. It would be that. And so when we saw you on motherfucking Making the Band, and it was like, oh, this is one of our motherfucking people. we like, hold the fuck up. Like, I remember him calling me and say, bitch, have you watched Making the Band? I said, no, what are you talking about? It's a trans girl on there, and she's singing her motherfucking ass down. Go watch it. And we literally was stuck on the fucking TV watching that show. you know, we didn't really fuck with Diddy like that, but because because it was finally some kind of representation that wasn't, and it wasn't just that you were queer, trans, da 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 da. It was that you was the kind of musical shit that we fucked with.
Right,
She can sing. She going from soprano, alto, doing all type of shit. So we was like, oh my God. So when we saw you, you were such an inspiration to us. And rest in peace to my friend, but it was a moment that I remember that was so powerful, and it's coming literally. You, Laverne, and Isis was that transition from that kind of talk show, Jerry Springer, da 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 da, when they started to share the reality show, when they started to take our humanity seriously, and it wasn't just like sensationalism. It was
exactly.
Even the conversation with you and the Trey on the show, and that kind of viral moment, it just was a powerful moment to me to see you, and it just moved me. And so that's why I was immediately got on the internet and was talking about it.
Thank you, bitch.
So tell me about that experience.
I auditioned. First of all, it goes way back to when I was little. But like honestly, like I had for outside of gospel, outside of the Clark sisters, Yolanda Adams, obviously Whitney, Faith Evans was like my go-to. Like she was like, you know what I'm saying, like the female embodiment of everything that I loved about gospel, but being done in R&B, right? Yes. So as soon as I heard in 95, as soon as the first album came out, I automatically was like, I got to work with her. Now, who was attached to her? Puff. At the time, like, you know what I'm saying? So everything was bad boy, bad boy, bad boy. One day, and I began to, at that point in time, I didn't know I was speaking over my life, but I would have fake conversations. My mom would never tell you this. My whole family say, I would have fake conversations with Puff on the phone. I would have fake conversations with Faith. I would have, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'd be in my bedroom. Yeah, I'm going to be at the studio when I'm in it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Just imagining myself doing all of these things. So when Puff initially started making the band, I auditioned for this was prior to my transition. I auditioned to be a part of Day 26. And me and my best friend at the time, who was cishet, you know, same gender loving, but he's amazing. He was an amazing vocalist then, still is now, songwriter or whatnot. But like he and I decided like we finna go for it. Child, when I tell you, he showed up with a 22-inch.
Period.
Well, man, is that I showed up with this Afro ponytail, like I just knew, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I was a butch queen and I was still serving. I was still gonna give you like all of the things, but I but I wish they have I'm sure somebody has the tape. But I auditioned and I made it pretty far in the process. But when it was time for me to stop singing and talk, child, the queen came right on out. It was like it was like they was talking to Jaila. I didn't know I was Jaila at the time, but it was literally like, you know what I'm saying? Like I was giving everything that I give now. So needless to say, that was a short-lived journey to making the band. So years and years go by because, you know, they did several seasons. Yeah. And as the seasons progressed, it was like I kind of thought that I, you know, missed an opportunity. But during that time, like I was in the process of not only recording and not only finding out more about music, but also finding more about myself and understanding that, you know, shout out to my good sis, Eliza Gonzalez from Chicago, who was the first trans woman that I actually had that I shared space with in a real way, you know, because I was from the ball scene in Chicago. Like I was a butch queen up in like butch queen, you know, runway, big girl runway, they used to call it, as an Escada. But I was doing that for a while and I shared space with, you know, with my sisters. But it wasn't until I was able to share space in a real way with Eliza that kind of inspired me to go ahead and, you know, and transition in the way that it should have been done. Not saying that there's a right or wrong way, but I'm saying in the sense of she introduced me to community, and she introduced me to community that was about self-preservation in the best way possible. And that was going to the doctor and getting my moans. So I started the transition at that time. I was about 8 months into my transition when I saw an advertisement that Puff had put on MTV that he was auditioning for his band. Now, the crazy thing about that is that I had lived in New York and worked as a background singer prior to my transition, and I had come in, became friends with a lot of other background singers who were in the industry at the time. So when I knew 3 out of the 4 background singers that were just on his tour prior to him making this announcement. As soon as that announcement went on the air on MTV, I called them. They were like, "We didn't know we had lost our job. We didn't know this was even going on." Like, he had not informed them at all that they were no longer his background singers. They didn't know anything until this aired. And at that time, they were like, "Bitch, you need to go for it. Just go for it." You know what I'm saying? What can they say? What can they do other than say no? And I had already been down the path before of, I was used to rejection. I was an actress auditioning for Broadway. I was an actress, a singer, vocalist auditioning for different artists in New York, all of that prior to my transition. So rejection wasn't anything that I was afraid of. And I thank God for my boyfriend at the time, as well as my good sister, who encouraged me and said, like, there is nothing to lose. You are living your authentic truth. Why don't you go ahead and go for it? So I auditioned, and in Chicago, I auditioned, and I remember I remember walking into that space, and at the time, because of, I guess the best way to put it is, when I was, and I'm not into like the passability politics, like I don't get into all of that, but they did not know, because I was presenting, and I didn't sing. I made sure that I did not sing low. I made sure that everything was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just to, because as we learned, and especially during that time, it's easier to maneuver throughout the world if you do have the privilege of being stealth, or if you do have the privilege of, being unassuming. So I used that to my advantage, and I did everything I could to make sure that no one knew. Obviously, casting knew. Um, but none of the other contestants who were there, who knew or whatever. And I was blessed to have the opportunity to sing for Romeo Johnson, who was the vocal director for the show. And I sang, and they got their life. And the rest of it was kind of history. It wasn't until I got into the house that the entire cast knew. There were a few throughout the process, but the thing that kind of solidified it for them was they was cutting checks. And every week we would get checks, and they would call our names. And the first week we got our first payment, the entire cast there, we sitting on the couches, and we was talking about, everything that the cast is doing during the process. And they said, "Michael, Michael Bowie." Girl, I looked around. Everybody was looking around like, "Who is that? Who is that?" Like, you know, everybody was going to get their checks. Who is they calling Michael? And child, I had to creep on up there, and they was, like, you know what I'm saying, like all the responses. Thankfully, they didn't show that on the show. But yeah, like it was definitely an experience. Now, mind you, because of the way that they film things, not everybody who was in the house or who made it to the house was actually. There was a segment at the beginning of the audition process where Puff, when we got to Hollywood, where Puff did ask me over the microphone, you know what I'm saying, if I was trans, if I identified, all of those things or whatever. But everybody who was in the cast wasn't there at that moment.
Right.
So that's why, like, you know what I'm saying, it was a surprise to a lot of people who actually I ended up being in the house with. And in that moment, I remember hearing him on the microphone, because I remember hearing him ask Nissan, "Is that a man? Is that a man?" And Nissan shook his head, yeah, like all of that kind of stuff, whatever. And mind you, this was 2008, so we have come a long way with not just people's understanding, but even the verbiage with which we have to speak about people of the trans experience. So there was no fault in that moment, for him, because we didn't know. We didn't have the words to speak properly. And I do definitely, outside of everything else that's going on with him, I definitely thank him and thank the universe for aligning us in that moment, and thank him for allowing that truth to not only be elevated, but for my gift to be able to, you know what I'm saying, touch lives in that moment as well.
Let me ask you how you get what I'm saying. This is 15 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is in
Mm-hmm.
literally 15 years ago. So you get what I'm saying. You have done so many things since that show. So that, but it- the beginning, the origin of your fame in regards
Mm-hmm.
to how we came to know you, being connected to Diddy. Has that affected you in any kind of way? What are some of your feelings about what's kind of going on here? Is there kind of any pretenses about being attached to his brand now?
None whatsoever. Only because I understand that number one, I'm definitely I'm an artist in the way that I can, and I'm not, this is an I statement. I'm not advocating for anyone else to do that, to do this. But I understand that horrible people can make good art. And I can appreciate the art and their contributions to the craft and their contributions to the art without elevating all of the nonsense that they do as horrible individuals. Because first and foremost, I understand that and this may not be for everyone. I understand that the gift that I have comes from God. It comes from the creator. And there's nothing that can defile that gift. Like, I can tarnish my name, but the gift that God has given me is the gift that God has given me. And in that respect, the genius that, you know, some of the things that he did, I personally, like, I've known, I've just, because we are women of the trans experience, like, I've known horrible men. Like, I've shared space with horrible men. I've had to work with horrible men. I've had to make money off of horrible men. And I definitely am one of those that I kind of like, I just, you reap what you sow. So everything that is happening to him, you know what I'm saying? Like, I believe women first, always. And everything that's happening to him is happening to him because God is allowing it to happen and for things to come forth. It doesn't change my experience with him. It definitely changes the amount of respect that I have for him as a person. But then again, this is somebody coming from me who always is going into a situation assuming the worst in people when it comes to dealing with Black men in those spaces.
Mm.
But also understanding that God and my purpose supersedes all of that.
So that's, honey, that's not my business.
Pretty much. And I
Basically.
mean, and it's like, and, you know, and the thing about it is that I like, and people ask me this all the time. Did he ever try stuff with you? Did he ever, like, all of that or whatever? First of all, if he did, you would never hear it coming from me because I'm just not into the business of exposing anyone. I will handle the situation how I handle it. You know what I'm saying? And I know that at the end of the day, God has my back. I have ancestors stationed around me to support me and to defend me. So I don't have to go out and, you know, do anything, you know, that's going to bring a negative light to that person or to myself, or unwanted attention to that person or to myself. God will handle it. And you know, like, no, he never did anything to me. So there was no need for me to voice, even if I had heard that, it, you know, being in those spaces, oh, he did this for somebody else, or somebody shares their experience with me. That's not my experience to share. It's my duty and my obligation to support them in the best way that I can and in the ways that they ask me to do. But other than that, yeah, no, this is not my business. It's not. I wouldn't say it's not my business. It's just not my place to say anything, to do anything that is, you know what I'm saying, you know, out of my character or against what I believe as a person or what the victim's beliefs are.
So let's go back.
Mm-hmm.
So who was like, go young? I'm talking about who was loving on you, who was
My
running
granny.
to you, who was
My
the
granny.
person that just was
My
that say,
granny, Juliet Ada Bowie. I wish I could show y'all the tattoo, you know, on my back. But Juliet Ada Bowie, they used to call her Baby. My granny and my mom. I'm not gonna say my mom didn't, but my mom got pregnant with me when she was 17. And my grandmother had 11 kids. So let's just start there. And my grandmother, I was the first grandchild to be raised in that house. I have well, actually one. I have one older cousin, but I was the first actually to be raised like in the house with my mom, my aunt, and my grandmom. So my mom used to work diligently, like as soon as she was 18, my grandmother got her a job at the correctional facility that she worked at. Both of them were correctional officers. So she got her a job there. My mom worked and worked and worked and worked because she knew she wanted to provide a certain life and a certain level of comfort for me. And as a result of that, my granny and my granddaddy, I spent the bulk of my time with them. And my granny and my grandmother and my grandfather, they loved on me down. My down. When I tell you like she was just, and she was fab, bitch. Like she was fab. My granny had the furs, the hair, the heels, the sequins, like her whole because her thing is, I like everything. I like everything flashy, like the Mexicans. I was like the the Mexicans. So, and of course, later on in life, I would go on to understand what she meant because she would have her house adorned with like decorations that we would get from these Mexican markets and stuff like that. So her idea of fab was actually very fab, and she didn't stop me from being fab. I remember the first thing. Now, of course, she pimped me out with my gift because as soon as she found out I could sing, it was like, sing for him, sing this, sing that. But one of the first things that she taught, she taught me how to monetize, but she had me in the suits, like in the menswear, like singing to store owners, and she had me like I have this purple three-piece like suit that was sequined on the arm, like what I'm saying. Like she allowed me to live out my wildest fantasies in her house, literally.
I love that. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. So, when I think about you, I think about like I was saying earlier, I think about like your voice and as a woman of trans experience,
Mm-hmm.
we both were trained as baritones.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
sing a lot of shit. So when I think about that, you and I see you on stage and I see you doing background vocals. I see you doing not just that, but I see you doing usually first alto, second soprano.
Mm-hmm.
I see you doing these particular parts. And so with somebody with that kind of range and that kind of skill and that kind of gift, how does that how have you reconciled that? Because you just was talking about earlier about how when you came into the space, you was kind of singing that kind of higher register. When it comes to like gender dysphoria and it's coming to like, being your full self, how did you come to kind of embrace your whole voice just as a woman without it being something that kind of held you back?
Because I was raised, born in. First of all, people I say they were born and raised like in church, I literally like my grandmother's house, like the apartment that she lived in was attached to the back of our home church. So when she moved up north from Mississippi, she was introduced to our pastor at the time, and she was looking for, she was looking to move, like, what I'm saying, from the house that they had a couple towns over to somewhere, closer. So he rented out the apartment that was attached to the church to my grandmother. So I was born and raised in the church. And at our church, it was a small, it began small, it got larger, of course, but it was a very tight-knit, small church. And we had to be able to cover all the parts. So it was like, sometimes I'd sing tenor, sometimes I'd sing alto, sometimes I had to sing soprano because such and such is out, or she got sat down because she was pregnant.
Period.
It couldn't be in the choir while she was pregnant. So, I had to fill in and learn all the parts, and thankfully so. And yeah, for like the better, and like I didn't really develop my bottoms until after my voice changed. So I was teased a lot for for having the ability to sing high, and I used to always have to fake singing low, if that makes sense. It would be like, like this old high voice trying to put on this, and, going back to like how we were raised, it was always put some bass in your voice. Put
Right.
some bass in your voice. I don't know how to. So I had to figure out how to do that. And as I blossomed into the woman that is before you, uh, I just literally like, because by the time I started to transition, I understood there was value in being able to sing all parts. Because I was working as a background singer, as as a bush queen at the time. So like it was like, oh, even if they were having all male background singers, I would of course have to do the not of course, but I would opt to do the top because you know what I'm saying. I knew that it was an advantage over all of the other singers. Also, growing up in church, like I said, listening to the people like especially Karen Clark and Twinkie and Faith, like I was always and Whitney and Shaka. I was always trying to emulate that sound, so I had the ability.
And what people don't understand musically, you think that for baritone voices,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of mezzo soprano is the easiest to kind of mimic because
Exactly.
so it makes
Exactly.
it easier for us to sing. If we take it down, it makes it easier for us to sing like the Shaka Khans, the Whitneys, because these are mezzo soprano voices, and that is the baritone equivalent as opposed to like a tenor being a soprano
Uh-huh.
and bass being kind of the alto.
And let me tell you, when I was an undergrad, my first classical teacher, I'll tell you, I walked out of there crying. Like my first classical teacher, when they told me, "You're a baritone," I was like, "No, I'm not." They were like, "Listen to your," they were like, "Listen to your speaking voice," and all of a sudden it was, "No, I'm not. I'm not. You see, this is how I talk." They're like, "No, no, no. Go ahead and speak." And like, I had to come to that was scary for me to come to terms with at that time because it was like, because because in Black church, like you really didn't have like we know what baritone is because
Yeah.
we were like we were studying the voice. But in Black church, it was you're a tenor. No matter whether you were low or high, they just classified you as a tenor. So I went throughout high school, went throughout, up until my freshman year of undergrad, and then realized like, no, this is where my voice sits.
Yeah.
Everything else is a plus, but my voice actually sits here. So that was shocking to me. But yeah, it's like it was being able to jump the octave from a baritone to second soprano, like you know what I'm saying, it was easier for me to mimic that sound. You know what I'm saying, especially after my voice had changed and started to settle, than it was first soprano. I have to work to sing first soprano, but second soprano, mezzo, that stuff, it comes naturally
Yeah.
because I was a baritone.
Yes. And you gotta know, I say this all the time. I don't know. It's a certain technicality that you have to know as a singer that a layman just wouldn't know,
Wouldn't get,
and
yeah,
they wouldn't get. And that's what some of the things when I think about people who talk about, oh, why is Brandy's the vocal Bible? Why is this? But they talk
right,
about these people, and I was like, a lot of times y'all don't know the technical stuff that make them great, and so y'all think of the obviously great people like a Whitney and da 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 da, but y'all don't
right,
understand these other unique talents of other people. That's not
exactly.
a range and just about da da da. There's so many elements to that. So as a singer, when I outside of making a band, another moment of my Jaila fangirling, I am a bitch who is watching different award shows, and I see your ass pop up in background singing. I'm like, I'm wearing out fangirling because that's who the fuck I am, and then I just start seeing you do a lot of the lot of background gigs. And so first
Mhm.
of all, I love me some background singers. When we think about even great people who started off a background singer as like Luther Vandross, Mariah Carey, and then people who are like kind of background is like their thing. When we think about like Lisa Fisher, when we think about yes, they got
Uh-huh.
skills to be up front, but
Uh-huh.
for behind the scenes, Tony Scruggs, one
Kelly
of
Price.
Kelly Price. When we think about like Mariah Carey's moment with Kelly Price, and also
Right.
Trey Lorenz and
Uh-huh.
old
Yeah.
Klaus,
Tank.
old school classics like Darlene Love, and it's
Exactly.
so many background singers that don't get their just due. And I love that movie where that kind of 20 feet from stardom, I think of what it was
Uh-huh.
called. And it's just one of them moments that I'm like, oh my God, I love background singers. So tell me about that experience and how, you've come to support so many people behind the scenes in regards to their music and support their music.
It started prior to my transition. So I lived in like I was telling you before, I lived in New York. I started off at Western Illinois University, got my associate's in communications, but I was also a double major in musical theater. There was no Black people in the program with me. There were actually, I'm lying, there was one who was a grad student. So he was there, working on his master's, and he was in the theater program. And I decided at that point, like halfway through that process, that I wanted to transfer to a school that it would be the fastest track to Broadway, right? So I decided to audition and I got a scholarship to the American Musical Dramatic Academy. At that time, when I was in New York, me and Janelle Monáe were at school together at that time. Also, Mila Jam. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mila. Shout out to my sis Mila. We were all there at AMDA together. And I remember they weren't allowing us to audition because they wanted us to complete the training before we went out there, using their name and not being ready or whatever. Uh, so at that time, I wasn't auditioning for Broadway, but what I was speaking off and doing was connecting with a lot of singers in New York, a lot of vocalists, a lot of background singers. So after AMDA was done, me and my best friend decided to stay in New York. And I began singing background for people like at Soul Village for people like Eric Robeson, Music Soul Child, Belial. This was all prior to my transition. Then I linked up with who was I consider my godmother in the industry, China Black. She was a lead background singer for Erykah Badu. So I met Erykah Badu prior to my transition. I met Jill Scott prior to my transition, and I was making inroads at proving myself as a background vocalist at that time. Once I decided to transition, none of these people knew who I was. None of these people, and I didn't feel confident enough in myself early on in my transition to reach out and say, hey, I'm still the same person, still book me, still call me. So it was almost like starting over from scratch, which is what led me to do Making His Band. Because I'm like, if I'm going to make a statement and let these people know, I gotta let them know, like, you know what I'm saying, like that I'm worthy, you know what I'm saying? And so I used Making His Band as kind of a way to catapult or reignite my career as a background singer, and kind of like get into those spaces. And thankfully to my friend Richard Glass, who was doing my makeup, who was also a face makeup artist at the time, he had told her about the show. She was, oh, I love that girl. Like I want to meet her. Like, you know what I'm saying? The first time I got on the phone with her, because I'm talking like this. And if anybody is a fan of Kelly Price, they know that Kelly has a lower speaking voice as well. My first conversation with Faith on the phone, she was, you sound like my good friend Kelly. I was like, who? She was like, Kelly Price. I was like, oh, and I just melted. So from that moment on, she kind of gave me that validation in that moment, gave me um kind of gave me the confidence and courage that I needed to continue to pursue other background gigs. And luckily, I had made friends throughout the show that kind of allowed me to blossom in that way. And they connected me with other artists who were looking for background singers. I got the opportunity to work at um, the Key Club when I first moved to LA shortly after the show. The Key Club on a night called on an event that they did weekly called R&B Live, and that gave me the opportunity to sing background for people like Tank, because I was a house background singer. So every major artist that came through, the house background singers would provide the vocals. So I was able to connect with artists during that time in that way, and it kind of just took off from there. Like it definitely. I've also been very blessed to like not after Making His Band, it was kind of like I stopped having to audition and I started receiving calls, like just based upon the gift, like, you know what I'm saying, like, which I'm forever grateful for. There were a couple auditions that I went out for that I did not get, and I was butthurt about it. But in the long run and in retrospect, I understand, like, oh no, God had you on this path, and that led you to this person for a particular reason. That's going to lead to this person for a particular reason. Like everything, all of my steps have kind of been ordered. And even in the moments that I'm uncertain, because the music industry is what it is, even in those moments where I'm uncertain of which road to go, I know that whatever path I choose has been ordained and is ordained because it has been.
What I love about that, about what we have talked about so far, is
Mm-hmm.
each time an opportunity came, you had the skill, the gift to step up to the moment.
You got
And
to be ready. You
you
have to
got to
be
be
ready.
ready. So regardless of whatever may be a quote unquote barrier, whatever somebody could use as a way to say no, it was not your fucking talent. It was, I know how to do this gig. I know
Mm-hmm.
this thing. And so each and every moment you stepped up to the plate and said, I can do it. I stepped up to the occasion. I have the skill, I have the talent, I have the gift, and here we go. And I love that. And that's so powerful.
I think I said it the first episode of Making His Band when we were actually, no, during Hollywood Week. They were asking me, I was in the hotel room and they were talking to me and they asked me, now, mind you, I had not heard this quote. And I had not heard this quote at the time, but ever since then I've heard a lot of people say it. So I'm like, did I start something? But no, honestly, at that time I was talking to them and I said, success is when preparation meets opportunity.
Mhm.
So like there's no being successful and having the opportunity and not being able to show up. You have to prepare for when the opportunity comes along.
Yeah.
And that took, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know how we are as singers. Like that took me sitting up in my bedroom. I mean, from the time that I knew how to sing, I was forever and always working on my craft. Then from the moment that I knew that I could act, I was forever and always working on that. Like, and then I understood, well, you got to be able to dance too. And once I learned that, I was forever and always. So we're talking, people talk about 10,000 hours. Like it was like, I can't even count the hours that
Yeah.
like I would be at home. And even once I realized, because as a trans person, especially coming to the game when I did, I couldn't get people to produce me. Nobody wanted to work with me like in that way. So I had to learn how to produce. I had to learn how to audio engineer. I had to learn how to be able to do all of these things. And my mom taught me that at an early age. Like, if this is what you want to do, learn everything there is to know about it. That's why I was studying classically. I was studying jazz vocals. I was studying Broadway. I learned how to song structure from country artists. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I learned everything that I could and became a sponge because I knew that when the opportunity came along, it would be a missed opportunity if I wasn't prepared and able to step up to the plate.
And prepared more than most. Like not
We had to.
to be.
Not just being black, but being black and trans. Girl,
Child.
you better be able to know how to sing all these parts. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you better come to the table with everything that they could ever require. That way it would have to be undeniable.
Period. So you go on to start this songwriting career. And
Mm-hmm.
so this was kind of this goes along with it. This goes along with kind of a pivot into how did that happen? Because for me, I know you have written for Faith Evans, you've written even for the amazing Clark sisters. We talked about them.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
As a singer who who's gotten to go in this kind of way, it seems to me that getting when you have skills, of course, you can do the singing stuff, but when it comes to like writing, that seems to be more of an elusive and gate kept moment where because it really is connected to the money, who opened the door for you to kind of get your name in the credits? Who said, okay, let me put you, because a lot of time we're in a world where people will bully you out of your shit, out of your credit. So tell me, how did that come along with you? How did that pivot happen? And who gave you the opportunity?
I when I first my first project ever was a mixtape called Transsex in the Emerald City. And I wrote I wrote all of it. I wrote all of it. My best friend, I have to give, well, my best friend at the time, I have to get a shout out to Curtis Rogers. They call him Flirty Curtis on Instagram. He's an amazing songwriter, right? So the first thing we ever started doing growing up was rewriting gospel songs. and making them R&B. So like I have been practicing my pen and all of those things or whatever. Like I get, like again, I said, preparation meeting opportunity. When me and Faith when I first started working with Faith, not as a background singer, I actually started writing with her before, I want to say before I became an official background singer for her. So she had heard, when I first met her, she heard my mixtape. I asked her to be a part of my mixtape that I was working on, and I asked her to host the mixtape, so to speak. So to what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? To
Narrate.
curate. There we
Okay.
go. Jinx. I asked her to curate the mixtape, and as she was listening to the stuff, she realized, like, oh, bitch, like you not only sing, like you write down. And the first session that I went to, she invited me to the first session, and it wasn't for her project. It was actually for a song that she did on the Games album. And then from there, she asked me to write with her, or I went to the studio session with her and Robin Thicke. And from that point, it was Robert Glasper. And then it just became a thing, as in, like, I was a writing colleague and, someone that she would call in often to do these different things. And the first major placement I got, got several different placements with her throughout that process. And the first major placement I got with her was on the Grammy nominated album, R&B Divas. And that got a Grammy nomination, which, obviously that, kind of stepped up, stepped up opportunities for me, because then at that point I was able to say, I'm a Grammy nominated songwriter. So that lends credibility, and it kind of validates, to those who may have been questioning, like, I'm saying, my abilities. And then I was able to kind of like run with that and say, hey, look, I'm trying to get in the studio. I'm trying to do this. Let me do this. Let me do that in whatever capacity I could. And like I said, being able to audio engineer, being able to produce, and all of those things also play a part in it, because if they weren't looking for X, Y, and Z, I would still be able to get into the room. And once I'm in the room, the gift is going to shine. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to be in a creative space and not feel compelled and not feel led to lend my abilities in whatever way I could. So that's kind of how that, the songwriting stuff popped off. And I'm definitely grateful, because I know that there are a lot of great songwriters out there who just don't have the opportunity to get into those spaces. So big shout out to my sis Faith. Like, she took me everywhere. Like, she took me, she took me everywhere. Yeah.
So in 2023,
Mm-hmm.
I went to Switzerland for the
I
Montreux.
love it there. Yes.
And it was such an amazing time to see to be there in Switzerland. I'm like, this is a dream come true that I'm able to come here and be a part of, I love jazz and I've been loving jazz forever. So to come to this event where some of the great Black forms, when we think about like Nina Simone, when we think about Miles Davis, Aretha Franklin, Marvin Gaye, Lauryn Hill, the list goes on and on. But also a smaller list would be like queer people like Michelle India Cello, Brittany Howard, Elton John, and who I went to see, Lil Nas X.
Come on.
And so, a David Bowie, a Prince, even though they're not sexually queer or whatever, I don't know, but they do represent a certain queerness when it comes to masculinity. And so, you are the first Black trans person that I know of who was able to perform at the Montreux Jazz Festival, and that's dope shit to me. So, tell me how that opportunity came about.
And I'm blessed to have this. I'm blessed to have, like, to be in situations where the artist that I'm working with deems me worthy of being in the spotlight. So it's like, whether it be Faith, whether it be Brownstone, whether it be, it's like a lot of different artists that I've worked with, and they've allowed me time to shine. And so I was on tour with the Gabriels. Shout out to Jacob Lusk, Ari, and Ryan Hope. I was on tour with the Gabriels overseas, and we were doing, like, this European tour, and there were several different dates that they had that were pretty huge dates, and I remember he was like, I want to add a cover to the set. And I'm not exactly sure what cover it is, da 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 da. And this was early on in the process. This was maybe when we were in the States rehearsing and he had thought about this. And once he decided to add a cover, there was an artist that was also on the label. And she's a huge artist. I'm not gonna, get into her name, but she's a really huge artist in the UK. So their plan was, and the label's plan was, to have her feature on at all of these different spots. And it goes back to when preparation meets meets opportunity. They had been rehearsing with her, and for whatever reason, they decided that, you know what I'm saying, it wouldn't be that the sound. How do I say this? For
She's
whatever
stuck.
reason.
I say
No,
it.
no,
She's
no.
stuck.
She's great. She's great, and I love her, right? But I'll put it like this: she wasn't able to attend all of those dates because she's also an artist as well. And Jacob asked me if I would be able to cover it. Now, mind you, Glastonbury Music Festival, like which is the world's largest music. We talking. People think Coachella is big, but like
Glastonbury.
when you go to Glastonbury and you see over 170,000 people at 40 different stages camping out, like you know what I'm saying? Like you're thinking, like you're thinking in your mind. So that came about. And I was so excited, right? This is how God works. I was so excited. But there had been queer performers at Glastonbury. Like, you know what I'm saying? And just so Elton John was there, like, you know what I'm saying, at the time. So it was like, you know what I'm saying? Of course, I would have loved to do it. I was getting myself worked up. And they were like, oh, well, da 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 is actually going to be doing it for this date. I'm like, kind of let down, like, oh my God. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is going to be my chance to make my debut and, blah, blah, blah. But I wouldn't have been the first. I would not have been the first when I was doing my research. There have been other queer and non-binary artists who have featured and performed at Glastonbury. And the date rolled around. We were looking at the calendar. She did it that date, and it went how it went. And from that date on, I started, doing the featurette the entire time. Now, there were times where because of like, you only have a certain amount of time on stage where it'd be like, we don't know if we're going to get to be able to do that cover or get to be able to do that song. And Jacob and the guys in the band were like, no, we have to do it at Montreux. We have to do it at Montreux. And you know me, I'm like, okay, I'm down. So huge shout out to them who, you know what I'm saying, who took Jacob has always been so supportive, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, not just with me, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, our good sis Nina, he, you know what I'm saying? He booked me and Nina as like, two Black trans women, like, you know what I'm saying, here in LA at the Ford Theater, at all of these different spaces or whatever. He's always been, and I thank God for placing those people in my life who are always advocates for representation and for inclusivity. And I can't stress this enough to everybody listening. Like, trans women are wonderful. We are brilliant. We deserve all of the things. But it's really important to have allies and advocates who have space and who can take up space and allow us space to do our thing and and to shine. So it was because of him that I was able to step out, mind you, and like these people not knowing who I am. Like, you know what I'm saying? But from the moment I stepped out, sang 2 or 3 notes, it was like they were in. They were in, like, you know what I'm saying? They were in. I left the stage and they were asking me, like, when are you going on the tour? Can we get tickets? Da, 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 da. Thinking that, like, you know what I'm saying? I'm the artist that was booked. I wasn't the artist that was booked, but I was the artist that ended up getting featured and was the first. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm just grateful that happened in that time and in the moment that it did.
So opportunities like that. So we have these kind of opportunities that come, but we sometimes don't even know we're kind of breaking ground. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Or that there even is a glass ceiling that exists in those kind of moments. And so how, are there any other moments like that you was like, oh, I didn't know I was the first person to do that. And I didn't even think of dreaming to do that, but I did it. Is there any other moments?
Well, you were right up until you said I didn't even dream of doing that, because I've always dreamed of doing, for instance, like, okay, two dreams came true at once, right? One dream that I knew I wanted to like that I wanted to get to or bring to fruition, and the other one happened as a byproduct. So when the Clark sisters situation came up, when I wrote that song, I was happy just writing the song, just being co-writing. I'm to be fair, co-writing, like you know what I'm saying, just co-writing the song. But it turns out, you know what I'm saying? We always think, oh, the Clark sisters are amazing. We know that they're amazing, but does that always necessarily reflect to the charts or things like that or whatever? For me to be able to co-write that song was a dream come true in and of itself. But when that song went to number one, it was like, wait a minute, like you know what I'm saying, like. I wasn't expecting this to happen when that plaque came in the fucking mail. I was, oh, I don't have the plaque here. I will show it to you, but it's in stores because I just moved into my new place. Um, but yeah, like when that happened, it happened as a byproduct. And I would say this: I think that the thing that I've learned throughout this entire process, and I know will continue to learn in my life, it was like never for me. And I know that there are people who, people can. This is an I statement. I, Jaila Simms, have always been purpose driven in the sense of like I know what God created me to do and I know the impact that he created me to have, and I've never been selective about how that impact is made. I knew that as long as I was creating and operating in my gifts, that they will make room for me. And like, 'cause they always say your gifts will provide for you, your gifts will make room for you. But like it literally made room when there was no space and when you don't even know that there's a glass ceiling. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know that I was going to be the first trans person to write. I never want, because it's gospel. I've always thought to myself, like, well, I didn't transition. There it goes.
It
like,
never gonna happen.
Like it ain't
It's
never.
with the Clark sisters.
Listen, and I
one
used
of
to
the first
dream.
ladies of coaching.
I used to dream of like being a stellar award-winning artist. And I knew in the moment that I transitioned, like, there goes my Stellar Award. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but I also, you know what I'm saying? But God is amazing, the creator. I won't even say God because some people don't recognize him as that. Whatever your God is, just know that the universe is always conspiring for your good and for your benefit. It literally it has to be, I think that when I learned that operating in my gift is all that truly mattered in this life, like in a real way. Like we can have all of the things that make everything great, all of what I call the noise going on in our life. But when you leave this world, the only thing that truly matters is did you operate with it? And for me, and I can't say for anybody else, for me, that truly mattered is did I fulfill my purpose? And and my purpose is ever unfolding and ever evolving. But I like to stay in operating in my gift because I know that that's where I'm going to find my most fulfilled. That's where I'm going to be the most fulfilled, and I also know that it will, and it's proven to me, it will make room even when there is no room, even when you think number one is just number one, and you realize, oh no, I'm number one and the only one. Like you know what I'm saying? Like so yeah, that's amazing. That I'd say the commercial came out of nowhere. Everything is kind of like just come at me in a way that like just staying true to myself, staying true to my purpose, and always understanding that although I deserve all that I'm getting, it was never it's never me that did it. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm constantly aware, like I am worthy of all of these things, but I am also so unworthy. If you know what I mean. Like you know what I'm saying? Like, of course he gave it to me, but I was unworthy of this gift. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't do anything, you know what I'm saying? Like, for God to be like, here, I'm going to give you this. So I always honor it in a way that's like, there is confidence, but there's not cockiness. Because I understand that every opportunity that I've given, even my gift, is a blessing that I did absolutely nothing for, right? You know what I mean? And I think that sometimes that gets lost, and people sometimes feel entitled, you know what I'm saying, to certain things. But it's like when you realize, like, I'm really not entitled to anything. Everything that I do needs to be in service because everything that was given to me was a blessing to begin with. I was blessed to be able to be born in the United States. It's a fucked up country, but it is also the fucking United States of America. You know what I'm saying? I was blessed to be able to, and I did nothing to deserve the grandmother that I was blessed to have, or the family that I was blessed to have. So everything that I do is going to be in service and an honor to, you know what I'm saying, not only, you know what I'm saying, to them, but to my purpose, which is to, in whatever way I can, to heal this world. I am a humanitarian. So, and we've had these kind of conversations, like, and I try to use whatever privilege I have to move forward the cause of uplifting and elevating the human spirit, the human experience.
Let's talk about the fruits of your gift. I want to talk about this new project, The Road to Glory.
Hiya!
Come on.
Excuse me. Sorry.
So
yeah, I get joy when I think about it. You know, I get joy when I think about it.
Hey,
it's been a long road coming. Like, first of all, I started recording during COVID. Mm-hmm. And I recorded over 30 songs, and about 24 of them were going to go on this full-length album that I was going to do. I was like, you know what? I'm coming out hard. So, but as fate and as things, you know, would have it and progress, I decided, like, oh no, like, that's too much music to try to promote all at one time. Let's go ahead and break this up into 4 separate projects. And so this is the Road to Glory is just the first of many that is going to be coming. That's going to be coming this year very shortly. I'm bam, 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 bam. But I'm super excited about it because I took my time on it and I was able to, like, really this particular, The Road to Glory, I was able to exemplify kind of like the different dimensions of like I really didn't step into any social commentary. This is all very and I'm not one of those artists who's not going to beg. Like, you know what I'm saying? I understand that, like, my livelihood depends on people liking what I'm putting out. So this was definitely very much, I want you to like me. I want you to like me. I want you to like me. I'm going to slay, but I'm also going to give you what you want. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's not going to be this, like, I'm not here to fight my audience. So, like, The Road to Glory is definitely, like, I tried to make sure that there were things on there for everyone. And that was kind of, I wouldn't say, for a lot of people, that's, you know, a little bit challenging. But for me, once again, because I studied the craft and I was able to learn jazz, to learn classical, to learn all of these different genres and study them. And thankfully, you know, with God, you know what I'm saying, of the universe, giving me insight on how to bring those things into, into production and do it skillfully. Like, I feel like this project is somebody's, you're going to like something on there. There's that, if you're not into the entire 8 songs, trust and believe you're gonna fuck with at least 2 or 3 of them. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? So The Road to Glory, I think that I hope people receive it, but I know you're gonna live.
So sometimes when we see people, kind of like when we start to see them get this kind of peak, this kind of get this kind of exposure, like you did early in your career, people kind of take those peak career moments and be like, okay, I'm going to rush something out and put something out to capitalize on the moment. But you didn't do that. It seems like you have let your creative juices kind of simmer and slow cook and really leading up to this particular project. What made you wait, and why is the time now?
I think a lot of it has to do with, I wanted to, and this was a plan, actually. Quickly after making his band, I took some meetings with Viacom and MTV and VH1 because they wanted to do a spinoff of my own reality show. And at the time, mind you, like, you know what I'm saying, we're talking 2008, 2009, going into 2010. I lost the GLAAD Award for Best Reality, Television Program, the first year that RuPaul's Drag Race won. Ru beat us. Ru beat Making His Band. And I say me because I was the only queer person on Making His Band, so I'm the reason y'all here at the GLAAD Awards. So, but that kind of like in that moment, I had a decision to make because quickly after that they were like, "We want you on Drag Race. We want you on Drag Race." And I was so early in my transition, but I did know that like I was living my truth, and I wasn't. Not to say that the girls that there aren't trans drag performers, but in that moment I was so solely so solely pointed on living an authentic and telling an authentic story, and just being real in that way, that I made a conscious decision to shift from trying to appease the gay supporters in the queer community, and focus on my craft and cultivating relationships within the music industry outside of the sensationalism, so that when I came out with whatever I came out with, I had the support and the validation that I needed as well, right? Because we are human and there are things that we need to be validated for. But I wanted to make sure that I had the resume, the support, and the skill, and all of these things to that when my music did come out, they couldn't say it was just a novelty, or it was just because I was trans, or just because I was associated with the queer community, or just being a clown. And for lack of a better term, I wanted to make sure that I was an artist, right? So during that time, like, which is why at the time I wasn't even focused on, on excuse me, on stepping into spaces that would require me to do kind of like any physical or body alterations, or making any. Girl, I didn't get the bags until 3 or 4 years ago. But that's because every dollar that I was making was going into like my craft. I was building up my studio. I was getting the equipment. I was taking lessons here. I was having people show me this and that, like, you know what I'm saying, so that I would be able to be in those rooms and in those spaces as a songwriter and as an entertainer, as a performer, with, you know what I'm saying, the knowledge that I needed to be equals and to sometimes surpass those people that I was working with. So I think that I played it well. I played it smart, in that way, because the album that we have now, the music that I'm creating now, wouldn't have been possible had I not gathered all of the knowledge and all of the wisdom that I've come to have as a musician and as an artist, to be able to put into my music and do it the right way. Sure, I would have sang my behind off, but we're talking about like the writing on this is stellar, the production on this album is stellar, the vocal performance is going to be fucking undeniable. Like, and I made sure that I took my time so that there would be no room for doubt. The only thing that you'd be able to say is, okay, I need to buy it. Or, like, you know what I'm saying? The only thing that the label will be able to say is, you don't have the following. The following is easy. Y'all got the money to give me the following. The music is, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's gonna be something that I can walk into proudly and present to anybody and say, bitch, get into it. Because what you gonna say. Because what you gonna say. Especially now in a time when there is we're living in it's a TikTok viral kind of situation. But I was talking to someone who's deeply embedded in the music industry, who works with, I mean, your top artists. Like, I'm not gonna, like, you know what I'm saying, I could go down the list, but everybody who's been a number one seller in the past, let's say 10 years, this person has helped in some way, shape, or form to get them to that place. And what they ended up telling me recently after listening to the album was, the labels that are calling them right now are asking them for two types of artists. They're asking them for a viral artist, like a TikTok artist, and they're asking them for what they call an all-time artist. And the all-time artist is what the labels will take and say, you know what? We got this person, and they are going to be the greatest of all time at X, Y, and Z. And they will actually take the money and invest in them to make sure that they're prepping them for the long run. And I could have been a viral moment. I could have done, we're Black and trans. We can, sensationalize anything. Half of the shit that we do just gets sensationalized just because it's us doing it. But I opted to not do that because I wanted to be what you call an all-time artist. I wanted to be the greatest of all time. And so, yeah, I hope that answered your question. I forgot what the question was, girl. I started talking.
No, that's what it was. I wanted to know what made it this moment, the time, and what made it.
Yeah, because all the pieces are it's the in the alignment. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm a Virgo, so I struggle with being a perfectionist all the time. And it wasn't necessarily like everybody be like, oh, it's good, it's good, it's good. Like, we love it, it's great. But if I hear something and I know that, like, oh no, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it wasn't necessarily even about anybody else because I know that they would like it. But me personally, had to get to a point where, like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like this is the best that I can produce this in this moment. And then I also have to come to the realization of, like, I can't continue to bottle these things up. I have to give birth to them because people are not just waiting for, like, oh, we want to hear what she's going to say. No, there are my trans siblings who are coming up are waiting for the representation to happen, are waiting to see themselves reflected in spaces that they did not know so that they can boldly step forward and do it themselves. So it's like, for me to continue to hold on to it was not only doing myself a disservice, but it wasn't truly operating in my gift and doing what I needed to, what my purpose was. Do you know what I'm saying? So now is the time, because this is the time now that it needs to be heard.
So the album comes out tomorrow on October the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you want the audience to know about the content of the album? What can they expect? What are some, what are some of the themes of the songwriting? What can they expect tomorrow when the album drops?
I am Black.
Period.
And I make Black music, right? Because so many times, like, people tried to get me to do, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the kinds of records that a lot of the a lot of people are drawn to through Drag Race and all of that or whatever. And it's like, sure, I can do all of those things, right? But I wanted to make sure that I was staying true to who I am. I was born and raised in the church, right? Church vocals, R&B, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, roots reggae, like things like that, that really, to me, stir the soul. So I feel like no matter what song they're hearing on this particular album or on any of my music, the one thing that you're going to walk away with is something that's touching your soul. So I want them to expect vocals down, right? I want them to expect great production, but I want them to also expect, like, a feeling when they listen to the music, more than just a vibe. I want them, and I know that they're going to walk away feeling something from the music, and that was really important to me. I think that there's a lot of music out there that sounds good, but it's soulless. And I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be a reflection of the gift that God gave me, which is full of soul, full of experience, full of lessons, full of things that I have gone through, so that I can share those things and the knowledge and the wisdom that came with experiencing those things to the people that are listening. So the love songs that I have on there are coming from a real place. When I think about disappointment or hurt, it's coming from a real place. And I made sure that those vocals also exemplify that. So if it's a time to be vulnerable, you're going to hear it in my voice. If it's a time to be strong, you're going to hear it in my voice. If it's a time to be jubilant or to celebrate, you're going to hear it in my voice. That's why I talk about vocal performance a lot, because people talk about, like, different categories in the Grammys. And I've always I know that I want to get a Grammy for best vocal performance. And that means it's not just like you just sing and da 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 da. It's like literally you paying attention to every word, to every detail, and being able to emote that through your voice, and, like, studying that record so much to the point where it's like, if I close my eyes and I'm hearing this, and if I'm just oohing this, like, right, if there are no words, if it's the melody telling the story, right? And I think that a lot of times, I can only speak for myself. I'm not going to put this on anybody else, but I pay attention to those things. And I know it will translate. I did certain things. I had them mixing at certain frequencies because I know that certain frequencies attract energies and push out certain different feelings that I want to be felt in this stuff. You know what I mean?
I love that. That sounds so powerful. I can't wait to listen.
It's
I,
colorful too. Now you know we the girls, we the dolls. Like there is not. I love Maddie. Right? Maddie always says live, loud, and a living color. Like you know what I'm saying. Like it's definitely like giving you the fantasy too.
yeah.
Right? So it's going to take you on a journey that is essentially the road to glory. And the reason why it's called the road to glory is because obviously, like I'm coming as King Jaila, I'm coming into, you know what I'm saying, what I consider just the beginning of my apex stage of my life, right? Like I've done all this preparation and now is the time to let it shine. The last and final song on the album is actually called Glory. So you are listening to the road that leads to glory, as well as, you know, it being metaphorical and, you know, me coming into this Black trans power.
I love that.
Gimme euphoria, more than peace of mind. It's the
So, how we close out the show when because we are a trans oriented show, sometimes we cover a lot of things that are kind of traumatic. I feel like this episode has been kind of joyous, but sometimes we cover like, you know, gender dysphoria stuff, and we kind of there's some, you know, maybe some people who have passed away or got murdered or some of the negative. You know, I live in Texas, so a lot of times, you know, we're
Well,
bucking
can
up.
I say this then? Can I say this really quick? Why you? I don't mean to cut you off,
Yeah.
but if you're saying that, I want to definitely give a huge shout out. And I should have said this when I was talking about you because it was two Black trans women in media at that time. I guess yeah, we consider media, especially you were doing your thing. She was doing your thing, but and our dear sis Monica Roberts. Like she was instrumental in like instilling in me like a that visibility matters and that sisterhood, like you know what I'm saying, like there's nothing that we live through as a Black trans women. We had, especially during that time, and even now, I'm not going to take away from the girls now because they're still struggling, but we did a lot of the work. We did a lot of the footwork, so we did a lot of the crawlers so that they could run, right? Because we were at that time in spaces where there weren't laws to protect us. There weren't necessarily safe havens for us to run to. So a lot of times, sisterhood and community is all we had. And when I tell you that Monica embraced me, I never got to meet her in person, but she would email me, she would message me, she would call me, she would say, this is what you need to be doing, or this is what we're doing right now. Can you be a part of this? Or have you seen this take place or whatever? What are your thoughts on this? That kind of sisterhood and that kind of camaraderie, it was essential, not only for my growth, but for the growth of the community that you see right now. The fact that we have these trans safe spaces, they would not be here had it not been for Monica Roberts and you know rest in power, as well as there was another trans woman. Her last name escapes me, but Lois used to work out of Howard Brown Medical Center in Chicago. She helped me, and she, I talk about being, dead name during the show, but it was because of people like Lois who helped me go through the process in Illinois and Chicago of getting my legal name changed and the gender, confirmation things on, on my birth certificate or what have you. So I think that in light of what you were saying about, you know what I'm saying, like just our live trans experience and like how we typically wrap up the show, I would be remiss to not bring up those names and to once again try to tell my sisters as well as the entire queer community that through unity and camaraderie is when we really see our power. And because we are trans women and have lived through and have experienced so many different things on so many different levels, it is that much more impactful when we come together. That strength, that resilience is literally world changing.
Mm.
It can change the trajectory of the future of not only our community, but as we see through things like Pose, as we see through things like the ballroom scene, as we see through women like Marsha Johnson, like Cecilia, who recently passed away. Like, you know what I'm saying? Those are kind of like when we come together, those are the kind of people, those are the kind of shoulders that we're standing on. And we literally shift the world. We shift pop culture. We shift mainstream. And we also have the power to shift our own and build and create our own narratives. But we have to start thinking more about, and I know it's really hard. Me and Nina talk about this all the time because as a Black trans woman or as a trans woman of color in this society, we are constantly faced with on a daily basis challenges that we have to overcome. So we're typically thinking about the right now, the right here. We got to make it from paycheck to paycheck. We got to figure out how we're going to get into this space. We got to figure out how we're going to, accomplish this particular goal. But there is definitely strength in sisterhood and coming together and recognizing that although it may seem like you are alone, you are not. There are women out here that you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Diamond, you can DM, like, you know what I'm saying? If you are, now I may not have bank, like, you know what I'm saying? But whatever it is, in whatever capacity that I do have, even if it's in connecting you with someone who does have those things, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, sisterhood and camaraderie is our strongest weapon. And we have to recognize that. And we have to, there's so many different times that I see online, because this new generation, these new girls, like, you know what I'm saying, like, and I don't blame them. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're all a product of the society and the environment that we are, the upbringing that we come in, that we come up in, right? So with your TikToks and with the social media, there is a lot of I. There is a lot of like, see me, hear me, or like, you know what I'm saying, viral moments and things like that. But we have to understand that when all of that shit shuts down, if they were to snatch away the internet right now, you are not standing alone. In that moment, you are going to have to find sisters and become a collective and find community that's going to help you succeed whatever it is that or succeed at whatever it is that you're trying to do, or overcome whatever it is, whatever obstacle that you're trying to overcome. You will not be able to do it alone, you know? So it's really important to me just to stress, like, sisterhood and community.
So what is bringing you euphoria this week, I would say, is sisterhood.
Definitely. Definitely.
Oh, I love it. That is what I wanted to. That's what
I'm here with you because you saw it, and you know what I'm saying, like, you saw my worth, you saw my value, and decided to share your platform with me. And what's that? The only thing that's gonna do, it's not, and that's what I want to tell girls. It's not a bad thing to share your space. The only thing it's gonna do is gonna elevate both of y'all. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna elevate the community. And when they see, and that changes how people view you, because when they see you and they see you attached to these, they understand that there's an army behind you. You're not coming up just against me. If you come up, no, girl, I got sisters. What? And they're gonna ride out for me. What? Don't try it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, that kind of energy.
I want to thank you for being who you are. I want to thank you for being great representation of yourself and your gift and your craft, and caring about just what you put out in the world. And just thank you for being a great representation of me. I just I know you doing it for yourself first and foremost, and God and but me seeing you out in the world existing, being this powerful Black trans woman, being an artist, being a singer, it just inspired me. I'm not trying to be no musical artist, but even my own music and me putting it out and just having the courage to kind of share.
You got it, bitch. Bitch, you singing down, honey, and arranging down. Don't y'all sleep on Diamond. And trust and believe, when I make it to Texas, we hopping in the studio. I've already talked to Nina about it. I'm like, Diamond, listen, let me tell you, we're gonna work on her project. Like, no, and I don't come in with that takeover spirit. But if you let me write and arrange a song or two for you, bitch, girl, I promise you I won't disappoint. Because you have it. You have it. Also, I have to say this, bitch, you have become a style icon. Like, there are times when I'm literally like, what the fuck am I finna wear? I will go back and look at your page, and I'll be like, oh, this was cute. Maybe I can pull it like this or pull it like that. So please continue to shine in every fucking capacity, because you are a light, Diamond. You are, in more ways than just one.
Oh, I appreciate you. Tell the people where they can find you.
They can find me on Instagram. Jaila is King. Don't get it twisted. Also on also on TikTok, Jaila is King. I have recently began to and this is like I had like that's another thing. Like you know what I'm saying? Like we talk about surprises and all of that thing. Like I had no idea. I posted a video on TikTok. This sometime last year. It was like maybe my second or third video. I posted it. I woke up the next morning. The bitch had 102,000 views. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, just continue to, for everyone, like I'm telling y'all right now to follow me on these platforms, continue to move forward and put yourself out there because you never know where your opportunity or where your blessing is going to come from. It could come from you following me on TikTok, which I said is Jaila is King. It could come from following me on Instagram, which is Jaila is King. You could also follow King Jaila on Facebook. I am working on putting back my OnlyFans because, you know, girl, I used to be a working girl. Then I have to transition. We didn't get into all of that. We didn't get into how I had to build this studio, honey, because I was getting them calls and making them coins. But you know what I'm saying? Like as an artist and as a musician,
work is work.
Work is work. And I don't want to put up any kind of like, you know what I'm saying, like false narrative about the music industry. It's not always you're not always just because you have popularity or just because you're getting those calls. I live in Los Angeles, California. My rent alone is it's $3,000. You know what I'm saying? So when I say stuff like that or whatever, it's like music is gonna pay, but you also have to keep in mind like the reason why I tried as an artist to learn everything I could was so that I could be valuable in every situation, right? So if I wasn't getting paid as a background singer, I'm getting paid as an audio engineer. If I wasn't getting paid as an audio engineer, I was getting paid as an arranger. If I wasn't getting paid for any of those things, bitch, what, honey? I'm gonna get paid, get my money somehow.
Come on. A tool in a toolbox.
Hello, but you can follow me on all of those things, and I guess the most important thing that I'm going to say, also, not the most important, but one more important thing is that if you can, two things. First of all, vote, vote, vote. Your life depends on it. Okay, and we hear this every time because guess what? Every single time, your life is going to depend on your vote. Like we live in a democracy which allows us the freedom to choose our leaders, right? But every single election, not just the presidential election, but those midterms, the elections that happen locally, every single election, you are continuing to vote for democracy, right? It's not you vote, and that's why people, you know what I'm saying, when they go through the whole like, they always say we're voting for democracy. You are. It is always on the ballot because this is how do I put it? It's always it's
Under
never just
attack.
it's never just guaranteed, right? Because there are people and things in power that don't want democracy, right? So we're always going to continually be doing it. Don't get tired of it. Don't get weary. Like, don't, like, you know what I'm saying? And please just don't sit it out. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'm sure, you know, I'm not going to tell you that Kamala is amazing. But what I will say is that, you know what I'm saying, get out there and vote if you have the opportunity. And I will say, if you don't like the way things are as they are now, there are ways that you can move the needle forward without giving up your vote to somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like you can still, I'm a strong Kamala advocate, right? Do I think that there are things that she can do better? Of course. Am I going to hold her accountable? Of course. But am I going to give somebody else a win to hold her accountable? Absolutely not. Now, me and Diamond have also had this conversation because I am definitely a proponent of third party, of like you were saying, getting us out of this, you know, this system that only has two parties, right? But there are other ways to push that forward without forfeiting your vote to Kamala, right? We still have to continue to organize outside of these elections and continue to put pressure on the party that is in power to do the things that are right. And two things can be done at the same time. I can multitask. I can vote for Kamala and still organize for the Green Party. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that I know moving forward, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we will have another path. I'm just encouraging you to vote.
Yeah.
I'm also discouraging you from voting for Trump. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Do not vote for him. Vote for anybody but him.
Listen, and also, I want to say the strategy for voting is not to change is not I'm not voting for Kamala in order because I think that, oh my God, she's going to be this savior that I'm not going to have to organize against. The
Right.
strategy is if I'm trying to move the needle and get success in all levels of what I'm organizing against, not just Palestine, not just trans rights, not just abortion, all the things that I care about when it comes to housing, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to all of these social justice things. When I am thinking about my strategy to win and move forward, I have to decide, who am I going to be organizing against, whether it's a Democrat, Republican, Green.
Absolutely.
Who am I going to be organizing against? I much rather be organizing against a Harris administration opposed to a Trump administration.
Absolutely.
And so my strategy isn't to, if me sitting out a vote does not help my strategy to be able to organize against the best regime. I'm going to organize against the American regime regardless.
Period.
Period. I'm going to organize against either one of them because I think some of the things that they're doing, they shouldn't be doing. So who am I going to be more successful to move? It's going to be the Harris administration. It's not going to be the administration. So so when I think about, I want you to strategize. Do not just stay home with the vote. There's people who you care about who need
the vote. Right.
Who need your vote. We care. Don't even think about it as a Trump Harris. It's your people who are organizers who need a Harris administration to do the work that we need to do to help our people.
And it makes so much more sense though and I think that that's where people get lost in the sauce, because it absolutely makes sense when you lay out the strategy. You know what I'm saying? And I think that people need to, because I was, you know what I'm saying, like, I've been offended, and I also have offended some people during this whole election process. But I think it's very important that we listen here, take it in, and then also explain the strategy so that other people can then catch wind, catch fire, and be like, you know, they may even jump on the bandwagon. Well, that's a great idea. I never thought about it that way. Let's go ahead and do it. So don't just block people out because they're not saying what you think that they should say. Hear them out, and then have a dialogue. And ultimately, we're all on the same side, right? If you are a progressive, whether you're a progressive or a liberal or a Democrat or if you are against the establishment and you don't want Trump to win, we're all on the same side. So we have to just figure out a way to understand each other. And Diamond, the way you just laid that out, girl, I'll be damned if you know what I'm saying, don't tell other people like, hey, listen, this is why you should vote this way, and this is why, because it makes more sense as a strategy.
Yeah, as a strategy. It's not that I don't give a fuck about Palestine, or I don't want a ceasefire. I want all of that fucking shit.
Right.
But what I do know is that these two, we haven't got, the Green Party hasn't. I understand it, like if you're in California, because you might
right.
But I'm in Texas, and so it's going to be either one. It's going to be administration of Trump or administration of Harris. And so as a person who is directly impacted by whether I get rights or not, whether I'm criminalized as a trans person or not in this red state, I have to know that it's going to be easier for me to survive a Harris administration while also pushing them. And that's the strategy. I can't just sit it out. I don't have the luxury of just sitting
it out. Right.
I just don't have it. And if you have the luxury, I understand. But I'm telling you, if you care about me as a trans person, if you care about me as a woman, if you care about me as a Black person, and you know that I'm out here organizing to directly help people in my community, I'm telling you directly out of my mouth, the strategy is I need you to vote so that I can organize against an administration that at least will bring me to the table to listen. I will not be able to come to the table at a Trump administration. I will not be able to. They're going to totally disenfranchise me. But at least
go ahead.
I have the power with the Harris administration to be able to actually come to the table and move in a little bit, or a lot of it in some cases.
And the sad case is, and this is the truth, the sad case is a lot of people who talking about they're going to sit out the vote. It's like, Well, I don't like neither one of them. I'm not going to vote. Yeah, but what you're also not going to do is give a fuck after the election is done. So, like, what are you talking about? Like you were saying, you're going to always be faced with it. You don't like neither one because all you think about is the election. If you are an advocate, if you consider yourself our friends, our allies, our advocates, please vote in our interest so that the people who are going to do the work after the election have a better chance at moving things forward.
Period. So, Jaila, thank you for coming on the show. I don't want to take up too much of your time. This has been amazing, and I love you. I want you to know that I love what you do and what you do in the community. You are just somebody that makes me proud. There's some people that I think are out here and they're clowns, and where they might be entertaining, they don't make me proud. And you are one of the trans women that are out here making me proud. And every time I see you on my TV screen, every time I hear a project from you, I'm going to always support it. And I just get so excited. And so thank you for being who you are.
Ditto, sis. I feel the same way, and I appreciate you having me on your platform. And also, shout out to everybody in the community who does support me. And please continue to do so because it's going to be an uphill battle. All these first, child. I need to be the first trans woman to win a Grammy for either Best New Artist, Best R&B Album, Best Progressive R&B Album, one of them. But it's a long journey ahead, and we're going to need support. And that's why I talk about sisterhood and community all the time.
I love it.
We all got room to shine. I love you so much.
Period. Thank y'all for listening, and we will see y'all next week. Have a wonderful day.
Toodles.
Love it.
I make it easy to love me. I make it easy to care for me. I make it easy to share all your world with me. And if you had the best of both worlds, it still wouldn't be enough.